Welcome to Inner Alchemy, a space devoted to exploring your potential for human evolution. My name is Rachel, and I am a guide to those wise, intrepid souls who are seeking to uncover their power for self-healing and remembering. For over 20 years, I've walked a path of deep practice in modern mysticism, shamanism, meditation, Ayurveda, and natural healing. With this podcast, my purpose is to share with you some of the latest insights and attunements that are coming to me right now in my work with my students and community as a way of passing the torch to you on some of these evolutionary ideas. Whether you're looking to unlock your creative potential, to heal from within, to deepen your connection with the feminine or your intuition, or to simply make sense of the wild journey that we're making right now on Earth, I hope this work serves you well. In today's episode, I want to invite you to have a glimpse into a secret world of mine, a project that is very dear to my heart and that is gaining a lot of energy these days, which is the Inner Mysteries School. This is a one-year initiation program that I facilitate into mystic awakening. So if you're in this program already, I hope you love hearing about our work in these reflections. And if you're thinking about joining us, I hope you enjoy this window into our secret world. And if you're feeling a resonance with the incredible potency of the awakening of the feminine that is happening right now, please stay tuned until the end of this episode because I have a really exciting opportunity to connect with this work this summer. So let's jump in. If you're listening to this, you may already consider yourself to be what is called an old soul. Or perhaps you're a lover of history and of ancient civilizations. And you may be familiar with mystery schools, which have existed under a certain level of secrecy across human history. From ancient Egypt to early Christianity or Judaism or Greece to Avalon, through indigenous culture, even they say all the way back to Atlantis. Humans have throughout time gathered in secret to explore and practice and embody the mysteries of consciousness. And even though these schools were mostly kept a secret, they were based on the principle or the knowing that each individual has within them a divine spark, something inside of you which you may already sense, some kind of inner potential or some kind of knowing. It could be the gift of healing or a connection with the unseen or some kind of deep wisdom, the ability to read energy, the capacity for clairvoyance or telepathy or to work with dreams or to serve as some kind of visionary or innovator of our culture. So you may already have somehow a sense of this mystery within you. And what I learned really early in my days of awakening is that most people have some kind of connection with this mystery. And they may have it under different names, or they may be shy about speaking it. But if you sit with the average person, even if they say that they're an atheist, if you sit with them long enough, they will start to reveal to you what their relationship with this mystery is. For other people, the relationship with the mystery can be something that is more practical. Like you may sense that you're here to create something or to simply learn how to be, learn how to walk through your life with a certain type of energy or a certain peace or a certain type of presence that is just authentically you. So the mystery has throughout time had different names and expressions depending on you, depending on where we're looking from. And so throughout history, in all of our ancient cultures, we typically hear in our history books that one person just randomly had this great gift of genius, or was this great visionary, or this great artist. And we tend to look at these geniuses or these innovators as isolated individuals. But if we go a little bit deeper, if we scratch beneath the surface, we will typically find that many of these faculties, these great visionaries, were actually linked to mystery schools or these great teachers, or the capacity to go beyond the kind of stuckness of where human culture is and to draw information from the field about what is needed or what the higher potentials of humanity is, and then to bring that inspiration down to earth in a revolutionary way. Now, the other thing that's really interesting is that despite the fact that these schools have existed through different expressions and different cultures throughout time, what increasingly modern archaeologists and historians are finding is that despite the differences between cultures, there are also many great similarities, many correlations between what was practiced, let's say, by the Druids of Ireland and the shaman of Peru and the priestesses in Egypt, or the tantrikas of India. So there have been many different expressions, different flowerings of consciousness throughout history, but also many similarities and common truths. And the tendency that I commonly see is that we tend to think that these mysteries, these great seers and great oracles and great visionaries, existed in some kind of culture in the ancient past by these spiritually gifted people who lived somewhere else, somewhere outside of us. Or we think we need to go to the shaman in Peru or to the gurus of India to access these mysteries. So typically we look at our little life and our little, simple human embodiment, and we tend to think that we are blocked, that we are separate from being able to access and experience and activate these potentials in our own lives. But the truth is that this is really at the core of the work that I do, and something that I have had a vision to bring to our culture from a very young age. And the other truth is that you do have soul memory. That your soul does have memory, and you may not relate to it very well yet. You may find yourself constantly circling in the same mind loops and the same worries and the same insecurities and the same logic. But you do have soul memory. And it may speak to you in whispers, in longings, in curiosities, or sometimes more strongly through urgency or depression, or just like a strong sense of knowing of what is right for you. And I'd like to talk more about this, but this is something that is increasingly coming online for people right now, which is actually access to more of the soul knowing, or more access to our own multidimensionality. And we'll talk more about this. But the soul memory is there, and it will speak to you first in whispers, or sometimes in cries or in screams if you're really ignoring it. Sometimes when you're in a crisis, and, or just this feeling like something's missing. And so this is really where spiritual development or spiritual growth helps us to retrieve and access these parts of ourselves that sometimes our 3D logical reality leaves us feeling an absence for. Now, right now in our world, with the incredible advances in technology and even AI, we have access to an explosion of information, and we have an incredible freedom, an incredible new freedom to create. But if we look around at our world, if we're honest with ourselves, I'm a very optimistic person, but if we're honest with ourselves, we can often look around and see that as a culture, most people are feeling a little bit disconnected, if not very disconnected, and just a sense that we are a bit lost and stagnant, or overdue, let's say, for an upgrade in our cultural expression. And if you're an artist, or a lover of art or music or mythology or dance, or these deep truths and philosophy, you know that at the spark of what makes a culture there's like a spark. There's something within people that if we can touch it, if we can activate it, and if we can bring it to life, this is actually what makes life feel alive, what makes life worth living. And so coming back to these mystery schools, and part of the reason why they had to be kept a secret was because they recognized and they were dedicated to enlivening the divine spark within each individual that sometimes, let's be honest, we forget. And so they were dedicated to these subtle yet powerful ways of knowing and remembering, and that these ways was something that we could develop and awaken and deepen through certain practices, through self-inquiry, through wisdom teachings, through breath, through meditation, through movement, through herbalism, by educating your mind, and through ceremony. And since I'm revealing my secrets today, this is exactly what we're doing each week in the Inner Mystery School. Now, we've talked about how many of these schools were teaching these mysteries in secret, so only to people who were initiated. And here I am speaking about it very openly. But they were secret schools, not necessarily because of an elitist thing, and this is different, very different than secret societies, which we can talk more about in another episode. But what these schools were deeply committed to helping you develop. These teachers who have incarnated through the ages were deeply committed, and are still deeply committed, to helping you develop a subtle awareness that is very uncommon in today's world. It's a way of being, right? And they've studied this, for example, in monks, in long-term meditators, right? That actually they have totally different brain waves. And so you're actually, in this work that we're doing together, you're actually committed to developing a different state of consciousness than what is typically found in the majority of humans, right? And that's not to say that you're necessarily better than anyone. It's just like having a different job, a different role to play, let's say. And developing these brain waves, it shifts your perception of reality. And it does often take time to develop. You can have past life credit, you can have past life remembering of this different type of perception. But generally, what I've found for most people, the human condition being what it is that it generally takes practice. It takes commitment. We have to train your mind to have discipline, to relax, to focus, to set intentions, and to correct certain misperceptions that you may have about yourself mostly and about other people. And so this is one of the things that we have to accept about this work, is that because it's happening in the subtle planes, sometimes it's almost unspeakable. It's like learning the language of your soul, which in some ways is common among all, and in other ways is something that is quiet and speaks through presence, not necessarily through loud words or flashy advertising. Now, in today's world, we have access to an incredible expression of spiritual teachings on YouTube, on podcasts, in books, on social media. But one of the reasons why so many of these practices were always done in secret is because it's one thing to have an intellectual understanding of this work, but it's very different. It's a very different thing to consciously cultivate this embodiment in yourself. When you're practicing daily, when you're meeting your resistance, when you're showing up when you don't want to, like when you actually are committed to retraining your brain, your breath, your perception on a daily basis and through life, through real life challenges, right? Through like real life initiation. So when we actually have skin in the game, when we're actually doing this work as an immersion in your life, not just like a retreat where you go to Costa Rica and just relax for 2 weeks and then kind of forget about it. No, we're actually learning how to infuse these type of brain waves in your reality, in your conscious reality, so the fabric of your reality also starts to change. It's just an incredibly powerful process. And so the other thing about mystery schools is because it's a school, and many of you know this, there will be tests. There will be exams, right? So sometimes we think that if we learn meditation and breath work and yoga, we're just going to like feel good all the time. But no. Like, yes, you will feel better for sure. And anything that is truly worth having is going to crystallize you. If it's going to turn you into the diamond that you are, you're going to be sometimes forged under pressure. Right? And so many of my students can relate to this. So part of the beauty of being in a circle with other women, or it can be men as well, but in a circle together, is that when we meet those places of resistance or challenge, or when we're actually feeling the pressures of life to evolve us, to move us into a new way, right? And we can always say no, right? But when life is actually pressuring us to evolve, that we have other people kind of midwifing or helping us to catalyze or just to witness our process. Right? So sometimes we have this image of like spiritual people on social media who have like flowers in their hair and, like dancing and, right. And sometimes it can look like that. But like truly, the real crystallization, like to actually become a diamond, diamonds are forged under pressure, right? So if you're really serious about about unlocking this potential inside yourself, there will be certain tests. There will be certain challenges. It's not just going to be about doing what you want all the time. Like you're going to have many opportunities to meet your shadow or to examine your mind, examine your patterns. Right? So it doesn't always feel like the path of inner peace, even though it does lead you that way. Right? And so that's all of the purifications we do, and the breath work, and the meditation, and the emotional healing that we do is actually to help you to release some of that, to help you to purify and correct your perception, and to help you mostly to lighten up about your about your journey on earth. Now, the other reason that these schools practiced in secret was because when you start to activate these qualities within you, and we do this in a homeopathic way, in gradual doses. For most people, it's a gradual. The awakening can happen quickly, but then it takes time for all the different parts of you to get on board, let's say. Okay, but when we start to link to our own inner knowing and our own inner power, it was always understood that that way of being was in direct opposition to the existing power structures of the day, because it was understood from that place, from that vantage point, that the power was not outside of you. It did not belong to the kings or the political rulers or the governments or the corporations, right? But to the divine spark, the remembering within each individual. And so these schools usually practiced in secret because their work had to be protected in a way. And again, it's not necessarily about needing to rebel against the government or it's just like this real sense right now that many of us are aware of, that the power structures that have shaped our world for a very long time are losing their influence. They're losing their meaning. And it's a time now where we're shifting to the awakening of the sovereign individual, right? Where the human who knows their own connection to life and to earth and is able to represent that alignment, that stability, and serve from that place, and then help others as well to orient to, and really what I see as a new way of being on earth right now. So many of my students say, again, it's like not about being subversive or anything. It's like learning how to be in the world, but not of the world. Or some of my students say it's like being a secret agent, where like you're trained in a different consciousness, and then you're able to go and participate and help in the way that is appropriate for your own soul journey and your own expression. So the Inner Mystery School is really that. It is a space where we gather each week to practice and embody certain mysteries, certain ancient technologies, healing practices, meditations, dance, and mystic teachings for the evolutionary human, for humans who are interested in being really in the wave of the expression of the wave of this new consciousness shift that is happening. And we do this in a very grounded way. You're going to get to know the power of your emotions, how to care for your body, your mind, to know the power of your co-creator, you as the co-creator of your reality, and many, many different themes. And what makes this work unique is that you're learning through direct experience and through a steady, stable integration of this type of consciousness in your daily life. So you're slowly developing your third eye, your connection with the field, your connection with your own inner knowing, how to follow that, how to express that in connection with other beautiful humans. So together we are lifting the veil, so to speak, on this type of awareness and on a different way of being in the world and on your own multidimensionality. And the theme of multidimensionality is something I'll have to come back to, but this is really significant as a turning point in our evolution as a species. And you may, if you're only relating to the world of matter, like the world of 3D, you're probably going to find that your life is a little bit harsh or a little bit boring, or you feel a bit disconnected or uninspired, right? But we come back to this principle that your soul does have a call, does have a yearning to explore and be enriched and to learn about something of yourself from the beyond. If you're listening to this, that's probably you. And to know that there actually is wisdom in your DNA, encoded in you, that perhaps you haven't been able to access yet, or you might remember it in glimpses here and there, but that this link with your own soul knowing, your own soul memory has been let's say a little bit broken or a little bit disconnected, or something that many humans have lost and that are yearning to reanimate, to come back to. And this is something, the awareness of our multidimensionality is something that's actually coming more and more online for humans right now, almost like we've opened up the valve on this. And if we don't know what to do with this consciousness, it's easy to feel disoriented or to get dysregulated about it, right? I was speaking with some of my friends recently, and they were saying they have a little girl who's only 2, and she speaks to them about what they think is probably her past life. Like, she actually talks about how she was a woman with a house, and then she got her legs hurt and she had to go with a cane, and like all these things. And she's only 2, and she's speaking about this different storyline, let's say, within her own soul memory. And I have another friend whose daughter speaks about, has spoken about the time where she had an apartment in Egypt, and they grew up in Canada, right? So like the mysteries of what our soul can remember is still kind of new to our consciousness, mostly in the North. But this is something that most of the ancient cultures have honored and recognized at the level of the individual for thousands of years, right? And even for elders who are preparing, at the end of life, Like, what would happen if at the end of life you were actually able to start imagining what you would want your next incarnation to be? Like, if you weren't afraid to die, but you knew that you were coming back, you were just going to get a new body. Like, what would happen if you would say, okay, well, I'd like to come back to this country and this family, and like, you knew that the love would remain, you knew that the wisdom that your soul had mastered, the things that your soul had mastered would actually stay with you, and that you were able to consciously cultivate or start to plan your next incarnation, and you were actually able to trust that, right? And that can sound far out, but that's something that the Buddhists and the Tibetans have spoken about for a very long time, right? And this is part of what the type of mind power, the type of consciousness that has been spoken about by sages and teachers for thousands of years, and that for many humans is now starting to become more conscious, more common, more spoken about. And I just think it's like the most beautiful thing, and it takes us away from, it doesn't take us away from being in matter, but it makes the material realm so much more rich and so much more meaningful. The experience of being on Earth is like a totally different, it can be very simple, but it can also be a very enriching and beautiful cosmic experience that we lose connection to if we're only in the logical, rational mind, right? And there's nothing wrong with the logical, rational part of you. This is a really important part of your brain. We're always talking about having these two hemispheres of the brain working in balance with each other, working in harmony with each other. So it's not about just being totally in the realm of the feminine all the time or the imagination, but learning how to balance these two aspects of ourselves. My work as the facilitator of this program is really to ask you the questions and to create space for your own wisdom to come forward. Yes, there are teachings. Yes, there are practices. Yes, there are certain alignments that we need to make with truth or with the correct perception of reality and of ourselves. But it's really about teaching you to attune ultimately to your own heart and to your own refining awareness. The path I've been devoted to for over 15 years is I was very fortunate to meet a teacher who I trained with very closely for over 15 years, and her work is really dedicated to the awakening of the feminine and to our potential for self-mastery, and rooted in the Vedic teachings, so the traditions of yoga, and in modern shamanism. And I can say as a facilitator that my soul has always had this resonance of the mysteries of the mystery schools of Egypt, of the Druids, of the south of France, and of course India, and indigenous culture as well. And what I find beautiful about the times that we're living in is that as part of this awakening, we're starting to understand the expression of the awakened human. And what is said is that the true shamanic path, that all of the paths, whether we're talking about the Aztecs or India or Egypt or the indigenous tribes of the Americas, is that all of these paths have their roots in the great cosmic mother. and that the one true shamanic path that will always prevail comes from Atlantis and Lemuria and from other starseed galaxies. And again, this is something that indigenous people have spoken about for thousands of years. And the true history of our humanity is starting to emerge right now in our own memories and in as an expression of the changing consciousness. So this is something that I believe is opening up as part of our remembering in the times that we're living in. How exciting. So what do people say about this work? Oftentimes they really fall in love with it. Oftentimes I hear that students will say they didn't know what to expect when they came to my work because they knew they were looking for something, but it wasn't therapy and it wasn't yoga and it wasn't like mindfulness or something, right? And what I often hear, which I find so beautiful, is that people say that it's something they've been looking for their entire lives, but they didn't know where to find it. And I often also hear that people say that this work is actually very addictive, that it just ignites a part of themselves that is so deep and so profound and changes the quality, their quality of being in the world, and really propels them to want to accelerate in their healing and their learning in so many different aspects and dimensions of themselves and in their own expression and their own embodiment of who they are. Many people come to this work sometimes with very little experience in meditation or yoga, and others have walked this path in other traditions, and often they say it's like a language that their soul knows how to speak. They may not they may have never studied it, but it's like something that makes sense on like an intuitive level or on an energetic language, which is also just really beautiful to hear. I would also say that many people will say that right now there is so much agitation in the world. There's so much, loss of meaning or harshness or stress. And that this work, that's like cultivating that divine spark, that connection with what is stable and rooted and true in yourself, it allows you to pass through so many situations and challenges in your life with just like the pure connection with the self, with the pure connection with the intuition, or maybe your mind gets a bit agitated, but it just makes the times that we're living in right now so much more meaningful and so much more rich. It's like a flowering from within you. So I really am so honored to walk this path alongside some really beautiful women and men as well, to be honest, but mostly women in this circle. And if you'd like to hear more about the Inner Mystery School, you can reach out to me, or you can hop on my website at thefreewoman.ca. And this work is really something that you need to experience. You may feel the call, you may know that this is work that you've been looking for, or just like a sense of disorientation, or like looking for something that is beyond what is just that takes you into your body and into the enlightenment of your own heart, your own remembering, right? Instead of just information that gets processed through your mind, something that lights you up from within. So if you're interested in learning more about the Inner Mystery School, you can absolutely reach out to me, and I would love to hear from you. Finally, this summer, I am excited to announce that we are initiating a beautiful series on the feminine, on the awakening of the way of the rose and the teachings of the mystic feminine through the tradition of the Magdalens. So if you are feeling the call to go deeper into the feminine priestess part of you, I would be truly honored to host you this summer. So please get in touch. Well, my friends, I hope you've enjoyed this contemplation on the mysteries of your being, and I so appreciate you taking the time to tune in and share space with me. If you've enjoyed this episode, if it has inspired a shift or opened a deeper contemplation for you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. I invite you to follow this show, to share it with someone who might need it, and to stay connected for upcoming practices and programs. Until next time, keep tending your fire, keep breathing deeply, and keep trusting the wisdom that's already within you. My name is Rachel, and this is Inner Alchemy, where we support your transformation on the inside.